Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back. It is another Tuesday. Little cold here, a little chilly in South Florida. Yeah. It's Marla confirms. A little bit chilly. Say hi when you get here. Let's make sure audio is good, video is good before we dive in. This is going to be a fun one. It's always exciting to look at a lot of progress, next era stuff. Fresh things, cool things, exciting things. Should be nice. We've made a lot of progress on ACSS over the last few months. It is not done. I will warn you, okay? We're still a little ways off from an actual official release. Now, everybody has had access to the dev copies, and another dev copy will likely come out today or tomorrow. Because a lot of stuff even has changed in the last, this is you are seeing stuff that's hot off the press, okay? It is, we're working on it every single day. And it's getting very close. So we'll talk about timeline and things like that. Everybody says the audio and video are good. That's fantastic. Good to see a lot of OGs in the chat. I didn't send out any emails about this. I only I just put some social stuff out, so it's probably going to be mostly our OG audience. But let's go ahead and dive into it. What we're going to do, today's agenda, we are looking at ACSS 4.0. So as you know, we are graduating into era 4 of ACSS. This coincides with the release of Etch, obviously, which brings front-end web development in WordPress into Era 4. Obviously, you need a really good Era 4-based framework to go with that. I did say on social media, and I stand by it, and I think we saw last week, and I plan to do some other kind of like workflow comparison videos, because there is this misnomer. It is just a lie. Like, people want it to be true, but it's not true. That using a tool like Elementor or Divi or Beaver Builder or whatever is just, it's faster. That's why we use it, Kevin. It's faster. It makes things easier. And it's just a lot. It's just not true. It's just not true at all. So what I need to show through a series of videos is that we can actually get to a better result, a higher quality result, a more scalable, maintainable, accessible result in less time, when you use the right tools and the right workflow. Because that is the truth. That is the reality of the situation. So we can't let this misnomer about, this tool, it's easy. That's why we use it. Well, I get it has downsides, but it's easy, Kevin. No, it's not easy and it's not faster. It's not. It has the same learning curve. You're just learning the wrong things. That's it. That's the only difference. In one workflow, you get to the end and you learn actual things. And in the other workflow, you get to the end and you only learn proprietary things that don't actually help you in any other aspects of your work. So obviously, bad advice, bad information doesn't help anybody. So we need to try to get them the better information. And we can do that through a series of short videos showing, hey, I'll just build this hero section. Look, I did it faster. Hey, let's build this landing page. Look, I did it faster. And the outcome is even better. Okay, so that's what it is. So we're going to demonstrate that. Let's talk about why some of these things happened in ACSS 4.0 that have happened. First thing I'm going to do is actually pull up the front end. I got a few different things for you to look at as we go through this. Let me go ahead and grab just the front end of a website. Now, what you're going to see is a broken website. That's what I'm about to show you, a broken website. So I'm going to go share my screen. And we got Mateo here as well. Looks like he's on there. He's automatically on the video there. Hopefully he doesn't have double audio. I didn't check any of the audio settings before we went live. But if there's any technical questions or stuff like logistics questions, I might have Mateo field those, because I have to answer them all day long, and I'm tired of answering them. So I'll just let Mateo have a turn on answering those things. Okay, so you are looking at a broken page. I'm assuming you can see this on the screen. The reason I'm showing you a broken page, I have done a lot of work on the framework side of things, and it is a really good and exciting thing to now say that automatic CSS is a 0 KB capable framework. You could literally have essentially zero style sheet, okay? So what I'm gonna show you here is we're gonna inspect, and we're gonna go to network, and we're gonna go to CSS, and I'll just refresh the page real quick, okay? And you're gonna see, we're gonna take a look at the actual style sheet in just a second. I have a couple things turned on, namely two little fonts put in, things like that. But you can see here that it is 0.6 KB coming in at 2 milliseconds, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go, this is the actual outputted style sheet. This is the generated style sheet from the current settings. So if anybody says, oh, you know, these bloated frameworks, these blah, 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 yeah, they're so big, they're so heavy, they're so this, they're so that, no, that's all nonsense also. So we have to, and that's why we're doing this live stream. I'm gonna literally walk through the tool. Like, let's break down the entire, what does each feature do? What happens when you turn this thing on and this thing off? What happens to the output? How does this all actually work, and how does it all actually come together? I think it's important for you to know how the tool you're using works, right? And what it actually does. And then when people say things like, oh, it's so bloated, it's so this, well, you could respond, and you can respond with facts, right? So you can see here that we have 2 fonts being loaded, okay? And then we have this new color scheme feature, which is currently setting my color scheme to normal, which is the default, which is essentially no color scheme features whatsoever, okay? And what I'm gonna do, and I already showed you the size output of this, okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the front end, and we will open the ACSS dashboard, okay? I'm gonna go to options. I'm gonna go to defaults, also variable manager, also class manager. We can also start with colors, for example, because I have no colors turned on. That's another reason why you're not seeing much of anything. Maybe this is the first easy thing, and the first very important thing to look at, okay? So I'm going to turn on primary right here, and I'm gonna hit save. And as soon as it regenerates, which by the way, I think you're gonna notice a big increase in save and regen time. Like it's much snappier, much faster, okay? Because we're doing a lot less. But you can see here that I turned on primary. Now, what you would have seen in the past is a whole lot of color variables, color partial variables, supporting variables, and now you just see this. And you also see, used to output in HSL, and now we are using the OKLCH color space, which is far more human perceptible, far more accessible. And this is just the era 4 color space that is going to be preferred, okay? For how long, I don't know. I mean, these things are always evolving, right? But OKLCH has dramatic benefits over HSL, for example. And it's still human readable. It is still human readable, okay? Lightness, chroma, hue. You can tell the values. You can look at hue values and see exactly what they are. You can manipulate the lightness and the chroma just like you could with HSL, manipulating the saturation and the lightness. Unlike, you know, hex or RGB, these things are not human readable. You look at a hex, yeah, I have no idea what that is. You look at RGB, who knows, right? Unless it's like black or white or something like that. But this is far more human friendly, right? And then the output is far more consistent with how humans perceive colors. And there's a lot of color space theory that you could dive into and read about. We're not gonna cover any of that here, but you should know now that we are outputting in OKLCH, which is a big improvement and a big enhancement to the framework. Now, we see here one kind of companion thing we can look at here, because now we're loading variables, right? We're loading tokens, essentially. And you have a choice now. You have a choice now, whether you are going to load those tokens in the style sheet or inline those tokens with the rest of your page content. So I'm gonna go to options here, and I'm gonna go to, where is it? Let's see, plugin settings. And I can go inline ACSS tokens. I'm gonna go ahead and save. And then I'm going to refresh here, and you see they are gone from the style sheet. And that is because they are now being inlined on the actual page. This has a lot of performance benefits. Of course, you get to choose which one you want to do. But for the most part, when we do testing, we see performance benefits by inlining the tokens. And essentially this takes a lot of, because when you start to turn on a bunch of the tokens, right, obviously your style sheet's going to get bigger and bigger, and inlining those does tend to dramatically help performance, especially when it comes to render blocking styles, okay? So this is, again, very, very good. There's a lot in this update for performance specifically. And you're gonna see as I start to turn on lots and lots of things, the style sheet's gonna stay relatively small, like very, very small, minuscule compared to what it used to be in the past. And keep in mind that the original framework, right? Why do we have to graduate to Era 4? The original framework was built in 2021, and then it was obviously updated and it was expanded and things like that over time. But CSS has come a long, long, long way. We're gonna take a look at color scheme in just a minute. And things are just way easier now in some cases. They're way more efficient. Workflows have changed completely to where now it's actually like, auto BIM, right? Container queries. These things have essentially erased the need and actually made the concept of like breakpoint utility classes pretty much obsolete. So we don't need all that baggage anymore. We don't need all that stuff going on. So this is just like really, really tightened up and is insanely small and efficient and fast and light and easy and flexible. So let's keep going. Let's take a look at what else we want to do. So that is inlining tokens. I wanted to highlight that because a lot of people ask about that. Like, what is that? Why does that exist? Whatever. There's your explanation right there. Okay. If you have any other questions about that or questions about anything, by the way, hashtag Q in the chat. We will get to questions. If you want to see something demoed, hashtag demo, and we will get to your demo request toward the end. Okay. So obviously I can turn on as many colors as I want to. You'll notice now that you have control over the L, the C, and the H. You can just put a hex code in. You can also pick from the color picker. All of your shades are automatically generated, though you can manipulate their values independently, okay? So all of that is very similar. This is not done, by the way. This part, there's actually still a whole UI, a brand new OKLCH UI coming for this that's not implemented yet. So what we're looking at here is just, for now, it's like temporary. So in the next probably couple weeks, this will all completely change. It's much more tailored to working with OKLCH. But you'll notice there's no alt color anymore. And I'm gonna go and show you this because you're also gonna notice that there is a new dedicated color scheme area. We'll take a look at that in just a second, but I wanna kind of go in logical order here. We'll do the palette. We'll do the palette first. I'm just knocking stuff over randomly. Palette first, then color assignments, and then color scheme, just so you understand the setup and the workflow here. So the reason palette comes first is you're gonna be given colors for a project or you're going to need to select colors for the project, right? And so it makes sense that you would go in, you have your colors that you need to set up and you'd set them up here. So a lot of my projects are literally 3 colors or 2 colors, okay? And probably how most projects should likely be, other than like semantic colors down here, okay? Where you might have success, warning, info, etc. You might want to throw those in depending on your needs. But I would rock like primary and base and neutral as an example. And this base has like a slight blue hue to it. I'm gonna go ahead and turn those on. And again, you're not gonna see anything happen here, right? Because I'm inlining my tokens. So on the actual page, those tokens just got added. And again, you're only using what you actually need, right? I don't need a secondary color. I don't need a tertiary or an accent. Right now, I don't need these semantic colors. So none of this stuff is gonna load. None of this stuff is gonna load. But I got my 3 colors and I'm just gonna leave them as is. There's no reason to change them, okay? And now we're gonna go to color assignments. And this is a very, very important section to discuss. This is essentially where you take the palette and start to assign it to general contextually accurate areas, right? Like we need context as to how these colors are going to get used. So I'm gonna go to backgrounds. You can see I can do just the body of the website. I can do the dark background color. We have contextual color variables like BG dark, BG ultra dark, BG light, BG ultra light, text dark, text light, text dark muted, text light muted. So it's like your text and your backgrounds, things that you use all the time and that have to work in combination with each other. This is where you set those things up. So right now I have white background to my website, and I've got base dark is going to be anytime I reference, hey, I want a dark background, I'm gonna get base dark. Anytime I want an ultra dark background, I'm gonna get base ultra dark. You can change these at any time to anything, right? This is just how this project happens to be set up. These are where you're assigning the colors from your palette, right? And this is where I'm assigning text. So here's my default text color, which is text dark, which is right here. So base dark. And then we have a color mix, which is giving us a transparency. So we're just taking our text dark and making it 70% transparent. That's not the only way to do muted. It's just how I often do muted, but you could do the muted color however you would like. You could just use a different color. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. And then under options, we have automatic color relationships, which we'll take a look at a little bit later, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is, we're gonna get like this site to be unbroken real quick. So we're gonna turn on a lot of the defaults. We're going to make sure that we see the spacing, the automatic spacing perhaps. We'll see what that does to the style sheet, and then we'll start talking about some additional features. Because if you just open a blank project in a random builder like Bricks or Etch or whatever, this is literally what you're gonna see. Like if you start adding things, well, if you're not using ACSS, right? If you're not using ACSS, this is what you're gonna see. You're gonna see this stuff, there's no spacing, there's no semblance of anything going on here, there's no styling whatsoever, right? And of course, automatic CSS we know is different. It's called automatic CSS because it does things automatically. I just happen to have everything turned off, right? So I'm gonna go into options and we're gonna take a look at what we have control over now because we did not have control over all of these things before. So the first area I'm gonna go is to defaults and miscellaneous. Can you guys hear that clicking, by the way, I think that's in my mixer. Is that coming through, Mateo? Can you hear it or is it just me hearing it?
I can't hear it.
Okay.
But also, I've been told that there's double audio from my side.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Let me see here. There's one thing I can check quickly. Let's go to window. Let's go to sound effects, sound levels. Window, sound levels. Okay. Roadcaster Duo chat. Let's try main stereo. All right. You can say something now and then let's see. See what they hear.
Sound check.
Okay.
Am I still coming through as double?
Yep. That'll be about a 20-second delay and people can let us know. Okay. Yeah. So this is a, what Stripe Goat is talking about here. So if you have been following the workflow and the protocol that we've been laying out, this is very, very important to understand, okay? Auto BEM, variable first workflow, all the things I teach in every single video. If you do things the way that I always show them, okay? And you're not littering utility classes all over the place, you're not being really messy, you're not abandoning the framework in a whole bunch of places, nothing's gonna change. Like it is literally a seamless, I could just put in ACSS 4.0 and essentially move on with my life. There's a couple little things you need to notice, which I'll point out in just a minute. But there's no new big learning curve. It's the same old automatic CSS. That was the thing. We wanted it to be lighter, faster, quicker, more modern, everything up to date, everything up to speed, but without you having to change up a whole bunch of things in your workflow, right? So you just install it and you can pretty much use it the way you've always used it. And you just get a whole bunch of new benefits and things just are easier and better is essentially the story, okay? So you're looking at right here, defaults and miscellaneous. You now have control over whether the reset style sheet loads, whether you're loading default body styles, default heading styles, default text styles. Of course I want all these things. Like you would kind of be crazy to be like, oh, I don't want any of these things. But we still gave you the ability to say, nah, I don't want to load that, okay? So I'm just gonna turn these on because that's what I would do on every single project. And you can see their default is on. That's why the little dot over here, that's like hey, you've changed this from the default, right? So the default is on. So when I put them on, you could see, okay, I'm in alignment with the defaults here, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and hit save. Now it's gonna load some default stuff, but what I'm not loading, I'm gonna go to the variable manager, is all the things that the default styles rely on, okay? Because everything in the framework is tokenized. Everything is tokenized. So you have control now over every group of tokens that will load. So whether you're loading the link tokens, whether you're loading grid tokens or auto grid tokens or width tokens, okay? And I can essentially, this is a variable first framework. Variables are very, very light. They're very powerful, but they're very light. I may have to restart my mixer in a minute because this thing in my headphones is driving me absolutely nuts. It goes away when I restart the mixer for some reason. Rode is not, I don't know. I'm gonna have to write to Rode and just say, hey, I don't know, like quality control maybe needs a little bit of improvement. All right, so I'm gonna turn all these on and I'm gonna go ahead and save. And then we're gonna take a look at like what is happening to the style sheet. Now you see when I refresh the page, things are starting to come to life a bit here, okay? Let's go ahead and let's take a look at what has happened to the style sheet. So now the style sheet has gotten a bit bigger. Remember, all the tokens though are being inlined. So they're not in here, okay? They're not in here. They're gonna be in a different area. What you can also see now is that every module that loads is commented. So if you're seeing something in the style sheet and you're like, what is causing that to load, or what feature is that related to, you're gonna be able to look at that comment right there and say, hey, these are our default body styles. Hey, you don't want those? Go turn that switch off, right? Hey, these are our link default styles right here, okay? There's your heading styles. There's your focus styles, okay? You can see all these things now commented in the style sheet. And again, you have control independently over each of them. If I don't want these focus styles loading for whatever reason, I'm gonna go to options, I'm gonna go to variable manager, I'm gonna come down to focus, let's see, focus. Oh, those actually might be in defaults and miscellaneous, focus styles right here, okay? So I'm gonna save there, and then we'll go back, focus styles, gone. Okay, so again, granular control, you determine how the framework works, how it behaves, what it loads, what it touches, what it doesn't touch, okay? So we're gonna leave that on. All right, next we're gonna go up to class manager. Big changes if you're familiar with automatic CSS here, that you are gonna see, wow, that list is way shorter than it used to be. Way shorter than it used to be, okay? Contextual colors are still there. So your BG darks, your BG lights, your text dark, text light, that kind of stuff that we were just talking about. Your section padding classes. Gaps are now only contextual, okay? If for some reason you're missing like content gap, container gap, grid gap somewhere, you can pop a utility class on here. We're not doing the gap S at M, like none of that stuff. That's just not needed anymore. We're going variable first, we're going BIM first, we're going container queries. That's the modern workflow. That's the era 4 workflow, okay? I'm gonna leave those off for now. You actually rarely ever use those. You rarely ever need them because everything is pretty much automatic or it's easy to add with a variable, right? Smart spacing is primarily driven by a utility class. Width is very handy to just kind of sculpt content width as you go through your development process. And then like text size classes, okay? So we're gonna save there. And now you start to see, hey, the page is coming more and more to life. Let's go ahead and check on the style sheet here. So now you can see we're getting a bit longer, right? Getting a bit longer. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever inspected the old ACSS style sheets, right? When you turn everything on. Because essentially now, I mean, we're very close. I'm gonna go turn on buttons. You can see the buttons are not on yet. So I'm gonna go to buttons. I'm gonna turn on all of our buttons. I can also turn on the card framework, the icon framework. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And then of course forms and such. But I'll just turn on those two things for right now, okay? You'll see our buttons now come to life. And now we can go check on the style sheet here, okay? Buttons actually, with the refactor, are insanely efficient now. And this used to be one of the, like, I think buttons stop essentially right there and start right there. So the entire button framework, which used to be hundreds and hundreds of lines, like in the old days, the way that we had to do it, it was a lot. And I've worked very hard to like get that to be as efficient and clean and precise as possible. And so the key here, right, we're loading lots and lots of things now. And what I want to do is I want to inspect, and we'll go back to network, and there you go. So we are at 3 kilobytes, okay? Pulling that through. Like it's massive, massive, massive performance and efficiency improvements that you are going to see in ACSS 4.0. Just really, really, really awesome stuff. Okay. Let's see. How are we doing in the chat? I'll take some breaks every now and then. By the way, did they answer? Are you still doubled?
No, my sound is fine now.
Oh,
I did hear your clicking, but I don't know if I'm hearing it because of Ecamm and I'm only hearing it because I'm in the green room, or if everybody else is hearing it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll let everybody, if anybody complains about it, because I can reset the mixer fairly quickly, just be down for 20 seconds or so. Okay. So as you can see now, this has come to life. One thing I want to look at is color scheme here, because this is a massive, massive improvements. Actually, I think this is going to get worse and worse as we go. So let me, okay, I've got, here's what's hilarious, because I'm dyslexic, right? There's 2 cables in the back of this mixer. One is for power. That's like a 30-second reset. One is for the USB connection to the computer. I'm dyslexic, so it doesn't matter how many times I do this. I never know which one is which. It is always just flipping a coin. So what I'm gonna do is reach back here, and I'm just gonna see if this is the correct coin, if we land on the correct side. If it is, I'll be back in like 2 seconds. If not, I'll be back in like 30 seconds. So just hang tight.
Oh, the suspense. I can answer Maya's question. I don't think all of what we've showcased is in the current release yet, but we are about to pack up a release, I think, today or tomorrow.
Testing.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, should be back. All right. Okay, I don't hear the clicking, so that's good. Hopefully it doesn't start again. All right, so where was I? Color scheme. Okay, so I love this because color scheme, the way it was done in the past with the old CSS techniques, was very convoluted, very inefficient. Like, you had to take all of the color tokens, all of them, which, remember, there were partials, there was all this other stuff going on, and you had to essentially load them twice. One inside of a prefers light, one inside of a prefers dark. So it's like, hey, here are the variables if the person likes light. Here are the same variables if the person likes dark. All of the variables in the back end were duplicated because we had to let users set alternate colors for every single thing. And you had to load them in different places. And then getting that to work with color relationships, another nightmare. Getting that to work with contextual colors, another nightmare, because of how those tokens had to be loaded in these different like root declarations. It was just really, really difficult. And then you had to switch with like a JavaScript switcher, right? Because you couldn't really use like native CSS stuff with your color switchers. It was just a pain in the ass. And it was a lot of code. It was a lot of code. And now it's insanely efficient and easy. And it's way more automatic as well. So let me show you. So I'm gonna go into the color scheme panel, light, dark, and you're gonna see website scheme. We have normal, we have light, dark, light only, dark only. Now we didn't choose these values. These are based on the new CSS color scheme property, okay? And so if you say normal, essentially you're saying, I don't care about color scheme on this website. I'm just gonna build the website as I wanna build it, and people are gonna visit it and they're gonna see whatever I built. That's what they're gonna see, okay? If I turn it to light dark, that means you are going to support both. By default, you are going to, it's gonna detect the user's operating system preference. It's gonna serve them the version that they prefer. Okay, that's how it's gonna work out of the box. You can also say light only, okay? Where you are, maybe you're gonna build the site to work both ways, but for whatever reason, you are forcing light only for right now, okay? Maybe your dark version's not done yet, whatever. You can also do dark only, where you're forcing only the dark version. I only want people to see the dark version. And you could use these for various reasons. Now, that's not even the fun part yet. That's not even the fun part yet. And when you switch this to light dark, I think the browser does anything that's like white will become black. Anything that's black will become white. And it's obviously gonna affect different controls on the page as well, like the scroll bars and things like that. But nothing's gonna happen with your colors. Remember the colors that we set in palette over here, right? Nothing's gonna happen with those unless you say auto scheme. I want automatic CSS to automatically handle the color scheme situation that's going on here, right? And so I'm gonna toggle that on. When you toggle that on, you're gonna get some new settings. And these are very fun, okay? So it's gonna detect which colors you have active. Notice that in my palette, I have primary, base, and neutral. So when I go to color scheme, I'm gonna see primary, base, and neutral. And there's really only two things you're doing here. You're overriding the main color if you need to. I'll explain this in just a minute. And some of these things I might say, I'll explain in just a minute, and then I might forget to come back to them. If you, don't hesitate to tell me in the chat, hey, you never explained X, Y, Z. I'll go back and explain it, okay? There's a lot of things to think about and talk about and work through. So there are situations where your main color needs to change, like your base color. If you chose a very dark base color for whatever reason, right? You're gonna need to set an alternate for that, an alternate lightness and potentially chroma value. And then your hovers as well. And the reason being is we don't magically know what color you chose. Whereas with the shades, if you think about the shades, what is the opposite of ultra dark? It's ultra light. What is the opposite of light? Dark. What is the opposite of semi-light? Semi-dark. Okay, so we know based on those names what the opposites are, but we don't know your main color or your hover, if those need to change at all, and if they do, what they need to change to. So you have control over those here. But notice your shades are now taken care of automatically. You don't have to worry about configuring shades or anything like that for color scheme. And then we have this force scheme down here, which I'll hopefully be able to demo in just a minute. We used to have lock color scheme where you could protect a section or whatever from switching. And this essentially is that, but way more flexible and way more powerful, okay? So you can now force a dark scheme on or a light scheme on any individual section, on any component, on any page or template or whatever, okay? And you just do this with basic selectors, which is really, really, really nice. So let me just hit save here and let's just see what has happened with our style sheet, for example. And I'm also gonna go back and just so we can look at all this in one place, I'm gonna go back to options and I'm gonna go to plugin settings and I'm gonna stop inlining the tokens. I'm gonna put them back into the style sheet. So we have just added color scheme support. This is all that's happened here. Notice this. It's the same exact set of color tokens, but they use this new light dark function and they declare the light version and the dark version in the same property line, in the same token line. There's no extra code added. There's no code duplicated. There's no @support statements. It's just this. This is it. This is it. We're done now. We're done, okay? So now we have full support and it's just should be automatic, right? Let's go ahead and refresh here. I'm gonna actually pull up the other thing. See this? The other thing that never happened before is you could never test it like this. You would, if you wanted to test it like this to test browser preference or OS preference, you would choose this and have to refresh the page. And because the page would have to detect it on page load and figure out what's going on, right? Now, you can literally just switch, you can just watch it happen in real time now, okay? Now, let me show you what forcing looks like. Because again, you could never do this before, but now you can. What if I want this one page? This is my home page. What if I want just this one page to be dark? Okay, watch this. So I'm gonna go to inspect. Here's a body class selector called home that WordPress puts on your home page. I'm gonna go to color scheme. I'm gonna go to force scheme, force dark scheme on home, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and hit save. Now my home page is dark. Not my entire site, just my home page. I'm just selecting, hey, if somebody lands on the home page, they need to see a dark scheme, that's it, okay? And this is completely separate from the rest of my website. Now, another thing that you'll want to be aware of, right? So I'm going to refresh our builder here. If I do something like BG, let's do BG Ultra Dark and see how this works here. Save, okay? And I don't know, I was tampering with this right before the stream, so there could be things not going well in this section, but let me just make sure everything is on real quick. Let's go to color assignments, options, automatic color relationships need to be on. I turned everything off to demo. There we go. Okay. That setting happened to be off. All right. So now we have this. I'm going to go back to the front end. We're going to take a look at how this behaves. That is a dark section. Now, my website is light. Like you can see my background is white. Like the body of my website is white. That means I'm building a light website. Now, just because I'm building a light website doesn't mean every section is going to be light. Some sections very well could be dark, right? And you may not want those sections to switch schemes. Like I designed that section to be dark. It just needs to stay dark, which can be odd. Like if it's the only section, like your footer, and somebody chooses a dark theme and your footer goes light when everything else just became dark. Why did that happen? That doesn't need to happen. That doesn't make any sense, right? So we need controls over that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say force light. So I'm going to say light only, right? And nothing's going to change there. Dark only. Let's see what happens there. And this is kind of what I'm talking about, right? The whole website just became dark, but that section went light. That doesn't make any sense. That section was already dark. People prefer dark. We should show them dark, right? Don't flip those. So what we need is a selector, right? So we need a selector. So this is hero section. And it's whatever, section you need. You can call them whatever you want. I just did hero. It's a very generic name, right? And actually I'm dyslexic. I think this is backwards. So let me go to color, light scheme, dark scheme, okay? And I'm going to explain this to you because it's not, let me make sure it works first. There we go. It may not be super intuitive, but it is logical. You just have to think through it for a second. I'm forcing the scheme that I designed the section in. So I designed this section to be dark in a generally light website, like in a generally light scheme. So I need to lock it to the light scheme because I need to lock it to the scheme I designed it in. That's how it's going to stay that way, okay? So you would think, hey, it's a dark section, I should lock it to the dark scheme. But remember, the dark scheme is the one that's flipping it. The dark scheme is the one that's making it light because it's changing the values, okay? So we need to lock it to the light scheme that I designed it in. And now you can see that it should, when I go to light only, for example, it will stay dark because it's supposed to. I said lock it to the light scheme. It was dark in the light scheme, so it's going to stay dark now in both. I go to dark only, it's going to stay dark. So this is how you still have the power to lock selectors, but you have more control over whether they are dark or light themselves. And I'm going to show you another example of that. Okay, so let's go to website scheme. Let's go to light only. So let's force the light scheme. Okay, perfect. Now I'm forcing the light scheme. I designed this. This should be doable here. Okay. What if I did color scheme, dark only? Boom. I've now flipped, you can now flip these in your CSS, just right here with one property. Like if you designed it one way, but you're like, I want to flip it and I want to force it to be flipped. You can do that at the selector level here for this, okay? Like I did it in the ACSS dashboard, but I wanted to show you, you can also do it right here, okay? So you just have lots of control points, lots of ways to handle this. You can also, in components, use this property right here, okay? Watch this. You can go something like scheme, and then if this was a component, let me zoom out here. Actually, let's get rid of this. Let's go into section intro, okay? I could do something like select, add a select prop. Let me go down here. Can I zoom in? And I could say scheme, and I could go light, dark, right? And then what I could do is I could come to my section intro, and I could say data scheme equals, and I could say props.scheme, and essentially let the user decide, is this gonna be dark or is this gonna be light? Without any other shenanigans, it's just going to use the website's general color scheme things to create light component versions and dark component versions, right? And now you've given them a selector here, data scheme, actually, let's see, light, dark, it would actually be style. You could use an inline style, okay? And you would change the scheme to props.scheme. And it would put in light, which you could say needs to print light only, and this would need to print dark only. And now you're essentially giving them a prop selector in that component. I don't want to mess this component up, so I'm not going to save it. But you give that user now a way to just say, hey, I want this one to be dark, I want this one to be light, whatever, and it's going to force that scheme. And you could also just say auto as one of your options and let it stay auto. So lots and lots and lots of additional flexibility come out of this color scheme refactor, which is very, very nice. Okay. Let's see. Yes, you can get a dedicated dark light scheme tutorial for sure.
Yeah,
okay.
I have a lot of questions already on the colors.
Yeah, let's do color scheme questions and color palette questions before we move on.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go backwards. Is color scheme alt gone?
Yes. That was the way we had to do it in the past. Now we are dedicating the framework to light dark. And this is how CSS wants light dark to work. And if you want to do like color theming, which is different than color scheming, there will be potentially ways to do that in the future. But rarely did anybody actually use that. And there's no real need. Like the idea that I would switch my brand color, which is my primary color, like if my brand primary color is blue, that I would just in dark mode switch it to purple or something. Like that's not really light dark. That's not, you're doing something different. You're doing some extra layer there. Now, do you need to perhaps adjust the chroma or the lightness? Yeah, and you can still do that, right? But like actually changing to a different hue family, that was an extra layer that a few people were doing, a small percentage of people were using our old system to do, but that's not really what's called for in light dark. Light dark is literally, do I want a mainly light interface or a mainly dark interface? Not turn it into a damn carnival where you're just switching the colors all over the place. So we are committing ACSS 4.0 to light dark.
All right, next. Does force dark mode work just like card selector?
Card selector. Yes. Yeah. So where you're like, I want the card framework to apply to this card selector, and you put that in. I'll show people what they're talking about. So you go here and you go to the card framework. I'll turn the card framework on. You have the targeting settings down here where you're choosing which cards the card framework applies to. And that's essentially what you're doing here with color scheme, where you're saying, hey, I want to force color scheme on these selectors right here. That's only if you want to force it, right? Or if you have like a dark section on a light website and it needs to stay dark. But in many cases, you would never need to use these boxes right here. Just like in many cases, you'll never need to do anything in these inputs right here. The vast majority of projects, you're literally going to do this. You're going to set this to light dark. I think it's on normal by default. Okay, normal is the default value. So if you want to support color scheme, you're going to come here and you're going to do that. This is literally all you're going to do. Okay, watch. You're going to go light dark, auto, save, and move on with your life. That's all you're going to do. And your entire website project now supports dark and light. Now, if you did a bunch of fancy shit, like you have 90% light sections and you did one dark section, now you're gonna wanna go in and force a scheme on that individual section using its selector. And that takes about 8 seconds. And then you hit save and you move on with your life, right? You'll also see here, if you notice, I built this little component, this little color scheme component right here in Etch, by the way. I'll show you how I built it. But this will swap back and forth, right? Very, very nice, very easy. It's instantaneous. And then it will also remember, I just refreshed, it's gonna take that preference, and let me explain how this works. Let me go to inspect here. Let me go to application, session storage. There's your color scheme key in session storage. I'm gonna go ahead and clear that out. I'm gonna refresh this. It's gonna all reset. Here's how color scheme should work. And here's how we've designed it. And by the way, if you're an Etch user, this color scheme component is free. You can copy and paste it into your website. Takes 2 seconds. And then you have a switch, all right? This switch, what it does when the page loads is the switch itself detects the operating system preference of the user and it displays the appropriate icon. So mine is light, okay? If I go to system settings and I go to, where was it? Appearance, okay? Light, right? Dark, it's gonna be dark. Look at the icon. The icon just changed. It's showing you the scheme that you're currently in, right? So I go to light, it's gonna show me a sun. I go to dark, it's gonna show me a moon. It's just detecting. It's not actually doing anything. It's just detecting and displaying the appropriate icon. And I'll brag on myself for a minute, in just a minute, when we talk about how this was built, because I think this is a very efficient way to do it. It's a very nice, clean, just really, really efficient way to do this. But you can see that it just switches back and forth. All the website is doing, and that switch is doing, is detecting the user preference and showing them what they prefer, right? Now, here's the thing. The minute I interact with this switch, I just clicked on it, my operating system is out the window. The website no longer cares about my operating system. It only cares about the fact that I just interacted with a toggle switch, because now I have opted into seeing a specific scheme on this particular website. And it's gonna store that preference in local storage. And now when I go from page to page to page, it's gonna keep showing me that preferred scheme. If I switch it back, it'll switch back, reload the page, it's still the same scheme, because I interacted with it. I chose a scheme. And the minute you choose a scheme, the operating system no longer matters anymore, right? That's how this should work. That's how this is designed to work. And it's very easy. Now, let's go take a look at how this is actually built. So I'm gonna go in here. It's called Scheme Switch. You can literally go copy and go paste it into another website. I put all the JSON for it in the community. And we're just gonna take a look at how this is built. Okay, because it's literally a button with no elements in it. No, it has no icons, it has no text in it, it has no nothing. It just, everything is dynamic, and it's just kind of beautiful. So, well, first what you can see here is I can show a label or not show a label. I can choose the size, and I can choose the label font size. So the icon size, the label font size have separate controls. The color will inherit the current color of the website. You can override it if you want to, but it just works out of the box like that by default. Let's go take a look at how it's actually built. So I went in here, scheme switch. Okay, I made a light icon and a dark icon that I put in SVGs into essentially an inline background style. And then I clipped that to essentially take that CSS icon and be able to control its color. I masked it. It's a technique I've done on videos before. And I used a before pseudo element to show the icon. And then I used another pseudo element to grab the label from the data attribute, data label. And then the ARIA label is set dynamically. So if somebody selects it, it's gonna say switch to light mode, switch to dark mode, right? So it's fully accessible. And the label actually comes from the JavaScript detection. So when it detects, hey, this preferred scheme is light, and you elect to show the label, okay, like this, or if it's dark, the label is just gonna respond to what was detected, and then it's gonna switch back and forth if the user interacts with it. But there's no text element, there's no icon element, it's all CSS. It's literally all CSS and like a tiny bit of JavaScript to handle the detection and the switching. Pretty neat, pretty lightweight, pretty awesome. So I would go check that out. Go paste it into your Etch project, play around with it. It'll work out of the box with ACSS 4.0, and you have a switch and you do what you need. We're gonna add one into the interface as well right here. I mean, this will work in the interface, but you may not have it on every page, or you may not be able to see your header on every page or whatever. So we're gonna put a dedicated one in the builder as well, so you can switch the canvas back and forth from light to dark and be able to build easily. Okay, I think we've spent enough time on light dark now. It is an exciting area of the framework, and just a lot of efficiency has been put in here, and you have a lot of flexibility, power, and control now, which is awesome. Okay, let's see.
Right. There's still a bunch of questions regarding colors in general, not just the color switcher. Do you want to address those?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so can you make ACSS generated colors accessible?
Can you make ACSS generated colors accessible? I mean, we need more context in the question. The answer is yes. Like, because you can change the lightness and the chroma of all of the shades. When you're using those, it's up to you to use them in proper combination, okay? So if you use text semi-light on background semi-dark, those are maybe very close to each other depending on how you've set it up. So that might fail color contrast checks. You need to check that, right? And be like, okay, I should not use that combination together. If I'm using background semi-light, I should use text light or text ultra light or something like that to get the appropriate contrast. There is no, this palette is accessible, because how are you using the palette? It comes down to how it's being used and how these two colors you've chosen right here interact with each other. Can you make an accessible website? Obviously, yes. And one of the reasons we switched to OKLCH is because it's easier to make accessible websites, right? It's easier to manipulate. It renders better. It's a better color space, okay? It was made for human perception. That's like its thing. That's its thing, right? So it's now easier than ever to make an accessible website. But it still comes down to the user. How are you building the site? How did you design it? You can take OKLCH colors and put them together, and they're not accessible. Just because it's a new color space doesn't mean it's automatically like everything is done for you. You can make bad choices. So if you're not making bad choices, then it's going to be accessible. And you should still do your color scheme audit, and you should verify the contrast ratio values are all appropriate. All of that's the same. You just have more power and more control to do this now. Okay, next question.
I think that if the question is, can ACSS make the colors automatically accessible? The answer is no, because we have
it
not
could.
enough
I saw somebody release a feature that does this, and it's essentially like, as I change my background, it shifts the colors. But there is no best of all worlds scenario, because 50% of the user base, if you turn something like that on, is going to complain that I can't match the design the designer gave me because you keep switching my colors every time and it's like, but then 50% of the people were like, well, I wanted it to automatically make it accessible. See, there's no winning, right? Every approach has pros and cons. So like, we could build a feature like that, but you essentially have to abandon the idea of perfectly matching a design that you were given, for example, right? Because it is going to, the auto accessibility is going to shift the colors that your designer probably didn't make those exact choices, right? So you're going to lose in that scenario where you might win in another scenario, and it's just not worth it. We are supposed to be professionals at the end of the day. So you know what a professional does? You get a professional design that is accessible. When the designer hands it to you, this is accessible. Thank you. I'm going to build what I see. And when you build a design that is accessible, it is accessible. And then you do an audit that confirms that it's accessible, and you move on with your life. We don't need toys that like, oh, well, I'm a color picker on my background color and I want my text color to change automatic. Where is the designer in this scenario? This is not a fucking toy box, okay? Like, you're supposed to be building a site based on decisions that were made for a reason, not randomness, right? So that's how we design the framework.
Yeah. So related to that, there's a feature request to build a essentially color auditing tool that would allow you to figure out if what you're building is accessible or not. I think we talked about it internally, but I don't know if we have like we talked about some possible drawbacks to like how do we implement this correctly, how to make this work, because you never really know how the colors in our palette are going to be used together.
Right. So what we need and what we will be building, but it's not automatic CSS. And this is where we get into frameworks for building things versus tools for building things, and what should the tool handle, like Etch, for example, or a bricks, or etc. And what should the framework attempt to handle? And to me, a primary purpose of Etch is controls to audit what I'm building. That's not the framework's job. The framework's job is to help me build faster and more efficiently and make it scalable, make it maintainable, take a lot of work off my plate, take a lot of decisions off my plate in terms of how I'm naming all these variables and organizing all these tokens and how things are interacting with each other in terms of like color relationships and yada, yada, yada. That's all like framework stuff. But when I'm like, hey, is this website I'm building passing color contrast checks? To me, that would be an Etch feature. So Etch would have a little auditor tool in it where you could turn on like accessibility auditing mode or whatever, and it's gonna put badges on things that are contrast is out of whack or whatever might be happening. That's gonna come to Etch at some point for sure. But that's a builder feature, not a framework feature, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely builder feature territory. Right, so next, is it possible we have multiple color assignments like primary, secondary, and base? No, wait, I think I screwed up this question because it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I think in the copy paste I cut something.
Okay, we can go back
I got
and
another
find it
one.
later.
Can we now have our own color framework? For example, BG level 0, BG level 1 instead of base ultra light.
No. A framework is a framework because here's the thing. If you can customize the names of everything, and this is I think I've written about this many times. I've done videos and I've done rants about this. It's very important for people to understand though. If you can change the names of all the utilities, you're not using a framework. A framework is here are the guidelines. Here is the workflow. Here is the process. Here is what you follow. You do this on every project. A benefit to a framework is consistency and efficiency. Once you have to start guessing, well, on this project, what did I call those tokens on this project? Oh, what did I call this on this project over here? You revisit a project 6 months later. What was the name of that token again that I customized? Where all the inefficiency is out the window. You're just sitting around guessing what are the names all the time, right? If every project, primary, secondary, accent based, neutral, blah, 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 over here, space, medium, space, large, space, extra large, whatever. You get into this game of well, Kevin, I want to prefix it on this project. I want to change. I don't like the word space. I want to choose. Okay, all of those little like nuancy type things, you got to get over. You got to get over because the minute you start changing them, you don't have a framework anymore. And imagine training people. You bring somebody on board to train them. What are you going to say? Well, on these 3 projects over here, we were calling it space. But then we decided that over here, we were just going to call it, we were going to start using margin. And then you get 3 more projects in and you're like, well, we were dumbasses for calling it margin because that doesn't make any sense. So we're back to using space on this one. And this is what happens to people's projects when they don't use frameworks or when they use a framework that they can freely customize everything. They make bad decisions. Part of a framework, literally getting to where this is you give this to thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of users, and it coalesces into like, this is pretty much the best, most efficient way to do it. So let's just all do it this way. And then everybody's on the same page. Everybody you train, you're training them on one thing, one process, one workflow, one naming convention. That's what makes it a framework. That's where you get the benefits from. If the framework keeps changing the names of everything all the time, you don't really have a framework, right? And so, no, we're not going to call it, we're not going to call it popcorn color over here on this project. Well, that's cute. I mean, that's what we're just describing the color. Well, it's bad to describe the colors. It's bad to describe them. It's literally bad to give them a name. This is what we've learned through years of testing and practice. It's bad to say red. It's bad to say blue in your token names. It's bad to say whatever other cute name you have. It's good to use generic names: primary, secondary, accent, base, neutral. These are good names, okay? They don't have the downsides of the bad names. And so when you are gonna say, hey, we're gonna use a framework, then use the framework. Stop trying to change all the names of everything, because now it's no longer the framework. And you get major, major, major problems.
All right. There's one more question about the OKLCH. How do we get the values from Figma and Photoshop? Do you happen to know?
I don't think Figma has a like an automatic converter. So you would take the hex code. Thankfully, like, you don't have to, because for the shades, maybe you will, right? Which you can just Google the, like, hey, what's this in OKLCH or whatever. But the primary color, you just put the hex in. So you grab the hex from Figma, you stick the hex in ACSS, boom, bing, bang, boom, you're done, right? If you need shade customization, it probably is possible to just look at the HSL, get the lightness and the saturation, and you can kind of eyeball it a little bit. Remember, HSL as a color space is a smaller color space, right? So they're going to render differently between the two. Using hex is safe because there's plenty of hex. Like we just had this discussion yesterday. It'll grab it just fine. It'll convert it just fine. But Google is always a good fallback. You could just take any shade's hex color and say, what is this in OKLCH? Or use a converter. There's a bunch of different online converters, and just get the values for them. All you want is the L, C, and the H value, and then you pop them in. So I can go here, there's an L value, there's a C. This probably corresponds very well to HSL, right? But with OKLCH, chroma can shift a bit as the lightness shifts. That's how it keeps it human perceptible. That's the whole point, right? So it does behave differently than HSL. And unfortunately, Figma is like, I don't know, I think they're way behind on a lot of these things. Like, do they even have, yeah, they don't have it as an option yet. So, they will at some point. They're just behind. So for now, you got to do it kind of manually.
All right. One more thing about the color scheme switcher, and then I think we can tackle V3 versus V4.
Okay.
We have a feature request to change the light-dark switch to represent something you can click. So something that makes it easier to understand that that's something clickable.
I mean, you can have hover styles to it. You get a cursor pointer. It's a standard pattern. So like, if you see a sun or a moon on a website or an app, I think everybody generally knows, oh, that's a button to click to change it, right? But here's the thing, you could style this I didn't want 8,000 opinionated design options built into this thing, but there's nothing stopping you from going in, grabbing the style of the thing, right? Or even doing something like this would probably work if you're like an ACSS user. Like, you could literally turn it into a button. You could do button outline, right? You could go in and change the minimum width now. You would override the minimum width. That's why it got wider, right? You could even change to 50 VW border radius. Like, you can go style this however you want to style it. It's just not styled out of the box because I didn't want a bunch of opinionated stuff baked into it. And it's also built for people that don't use automatic CSS also. So it doesn't have anything really ACSS specific in it.
Okay. Let's move on to V3 and V4. So there were a bunch of questions about, like, is V4 out? No, V4 is not stably out, but we have released, I think 29 updates to it. They are still development builds, so it's a big refactor in progress. It's a lot of like small improvements and small refactors here and there. So not necessarily fully ready for stable builds, but I mean, I'm using it on my own website. I think we're using it on pretty much a bunch of our own websites. So not quite out yet. There will be no V3 to V4 upgrade path. This is the important part. V4 is a clean cut. We are dumping a bunch of stuff that makes no longer sense. Like essentially we looked at 4 years of information over what we built, and now we know some things that work and some things that don't work. And so we are dumping a bunch of essentially that would. And so V4 is not going to be there's not going to be an upgrade path to V3 from V3 to V4. They're probably going to be, from a technical perspective, separate products, so that there's not even the possibility that you accidentally install V4, upgrade V3 to V4. And we're going to try to put as many guardrails as possible so that it's not even an option. There were other questions about will there be some kind of overview of what has changed from V3 to V4? Yes, there absolutely will be plenty of information, tutorials, etc., etc. And then one question is more for you. Will we have animations and transitions in V4?
Transitions is already here. Transitions has been here. I did refactor transitions. So they're actually, they're much more powerful now. I would say flexible, right? So there's a global transition. So you have, because most things transition essentially the same. And you want to avoid like radical shifts in how things transition. Like when I hover, that transition for the background or in the text, perhaps, whatever happens to be transitioning at the time. And then you might have so that speed that I'm transitioning that is probably going to be the same speed as if I translated a card and I transition the translation, probably same speed. Like that kind of consistency makes things feel very cohesive. If you've got cards that translate like instantly and then other things go slowly and it's like, where you see that a lot? You see that a lot on like Element or Divi, even like control-based animations where somebody used an interface to add a bunch of animation effects, and there's just no semblance of, it's chaos. Because literally they went in and just, ooh, this looks fun. Ooh, look at that. And they're just dragging sliders and toggles. There's no semblance of thought here, right? And that's where you get the crazy and stuff flying in from the left and fly. Why? Oh, because you put an interface in front of somebody who didn't know what the hell they were doing. So we handle transitions. We go to additional styling, transition. So we're going to load the transition variables. And then you set a global timing function, a global duration, a global delay. And then when you are, the way that you can use this, which is kind of neat, if you remember the old system, there was a big box here for all the properties that would get translated, and you were kind of translating them all at all times. And then I rethought about it, and I was like, I think this can be done a lot more flexibly. So if we go into Etch, right, you would go like this. It would be something like, I'm just going to throw this on a rant. This is not actually transitioning anything, but this is kind of how it would work. So you would do transition property, right? And you could literally like comma separate these out here, okay? So you would say like, I want to transition the border color, I want to transition the color, and I want to transition the background, all right? And then what is the transition? All the other things, right, is just transition. And now we're doing the global transition. And then you can also do it, I think, in one line like this, where, all right, you're doing something like background transition, and then color transition. And essentially you're just referencing your global transition with the exact properties that you want to apply it to, which is way more flexible and way more efficient as well. You're not constantly loading this global like giant string of properties that aren't actually existing. And yeah, so that was a change there that we made. What was the other half of that question? Animation.
That was animations and transitions.
Yeah, no, we're not an animation studio. And once again, I'll put out the challenge. I mean, you can Like, find me the data that, hey, Kevin, I made shit fly in from the bottom and our conversion rate skyrocketed. It's never happened. It doesn't happen, okay? So, like, I hope you're charging extra if you're putting all that time and work into animating people's websites for essentially no reason, just somebody's ego. I hope you're getting paid a lot of extra for that, because you're doing a lot of extra work for very little, if no benefit. And sometimes worse benefit. Sometimes the conversion rate goes down because people are like, what's going on this website? I'm out. I think I'll go to a normal website. Yeah, we're not an animation studio. There's plenty of animation plugins or whatever interfaces, apps that you can use if you want to. If you want to screw up your site, there's a lot of different ways to do it. ACSS won't be one of them.
All right. Next up, I thought V4 beta was not intended for production sites. Well, technically, it's called a dev. I think
it's called use it at your own risk.
Yeah. It's essentially called use it at our own risk. That's why we are using it on our websites. But I mean, we can also fix the stuff that we break. Though it has to be said that that V4 is the only version that works for Etch. So to some extent, there's a little bit of like, if you're building Etch sites and you want to use ACSS, you're kind of limited to using that dev version. But, and this ties to the next question, is the dev version compatible to V4 Final? I would say, with perhaps the exception of some deprecations that we're planning to release this week, most likely, a lot of the work that we're doing.
Those are all pretty much done now, by the way.
Okay, good. A lot of the work that we're doing is pretty much a refactor to make things better. So, with the exception of some things that we've dropped, but we've already dropped pretty much everything that we wanted to drop, I think. Most likely, what's included in the dev right now is going to be included in final. So you shouldn't have surprises from that point of view.
Yeah, now that the colors will shift a little bit with the new UI that's coming out. So if you build with it right now, you'll have to adjust your colors a little bit.
Oh yeah, true.
It would literally take you probably 30 seconds like to fix after we do the next update. The other big one that was waiting was color scheme, which is now done. So now that color scheme is shipped and the OKLCH refactor has shipped, let me look at my to-do list. Like, I don't think, yeah, it's and now that we've got the classes area cleaned up and the Gutenberg stuff is cleaned up now as well, because I think, let's test this out real quick. If we go into Gutenberg, which you can see here now. Look at all the exposed props. Ooh, fun. Look at that.
Nice.
But I think one of the problems before, for example, was all of this would blow up if you went to, I can explain too. We're the only framework to fix Gutenberg's #1. Like, it has a just nail in its coffin issue. And I kind of fixed it. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But if I go to inline tokens, this used to blow up Gutenberg. I don't know if it still does. Nope. So now you can choose to, because I used to have to tell people to turn that off because it used to just completely obliterate Gutenberg. We fixed that, so that's good. Fantastic. I like to see that. Okay, let's talk about the big problem with Gutenberg. Here it is, okay? They use the same editor for every context. And if you haven't caught on yet, it creates a little bit of a problem, okay? So the same editor I use for pages. When I go to a page is aware of the site that I'm building, okay? It's aware of the template I have chosen at the time, or my index template or whatever. And with automatic CSS active, this page is blank. Let me go to here's sample page. There's our sample page. Okay, so I can see what I built in the context of how I built it. Like, the background's white because the background of my website is white. If I were to set the background to black in color assignments right here, it would show up black in Gutenberg, and all is well in the world. That's fantastic. That's when you're building a page. Now, they use the same editor, and they didn't think this through, for blog posts. Now, a blog post is just content. It's just, I'm just writing an article. how that article is going to render on my site is only determined by a template, a blog template, and where this blog content is injected into that template specifically, because this isn't the template, right? And so if I had a dark website with white text, I would have to write my blog posts in that context, even though I might very often, where's an example of let's go to get frames, maybe as an example, I don't know, can't remember. I don't know, it was at one time, but there's a lot of times where you design a blog post template and it's a dark website, but you create a white area, a light area to inject because most people prefer reading black on white. Okay, black text on a white background. And so for maximum readability, you create a white area to inject the blog post content. And the Gutenberg editor, there's no way of informing Gutenberg that you've done that. And so if you have a dark website, you're forced to write light text on a dark background, even though that might not be how you're rendering your blog post, okay? And so what I've done in automatic CSS, because it's a very annoying problem and I just needed to fix it, you can go down to Gutenberg. Where's my Gutenberg area? Additional styling. No, why am I not seeing it right now? Options, here we go. Options, Gutenberg. Okay, look at this, blog posts. By the way, this also supports, for those of you OGs who follow my advice and you don't use the default blog post functionality in WordPress, you create a CPT called articles or blog or whatever it happens to be, right? You can tell automatic CSS now your post types that you want this to, and it doesn't have to just be a blog. It can literally be your FAQs. That's another one. FAQs. Why am I writing FAQs with a black background and white text? I'm not rendering them that way. It's not how I'm rendering them. Like Gutenberg is completely uninformed as to how you're rendering the content you're authoring. It was just insane to me. That's just crazy. And so now you can say, hey, these post types right here, I want the background, the editor background to be white, and I want the text to be black. So you can write in sensible fashion for these areas that should not be rendering your general website colors, right? Testimonials. Why am I writing, like my testimonial cards are white with black text. Why am I writing them? Just because my website background is black, I have to write my testimonials on a black background? It's not how I'm rendering them. Right? So you can choose now how Gutenberg actually renders in these specific post types. Nobody else does that I know of. So it's another benefit. Awesome. Face cams covering the panel. Oh, I'll keep it over here.
Oh yeah, well.
Keep it on the right side.
So Michael tells us that he was able to upgrade from V3 to V4, and he had to do some adjustments, but for the most part, it worked. Which, again, we didn't build it with that in mind, but it's awesome to hear that it didn't completely nuke your website.
Well, the more you followed an auto BEM workflow and variable first, and like it's your upgrade path is going to be way, way, way easier if you were attempting to upgrade.
I suppose that you could attempt, so you need to understand what we're dropping exactly if you're going to update from V3. Know that there is no support for Oxygen, for Bricks, for Quickly, for Breakdance in V4. So if you're upgrading from
for
one
Bricks,
of those...
Did you say Bricks? For Bricks there is, but not...
Did I say Bricks? No,
I don't know.
Not Bricks.
I wasn't listening that closely, but...
No, I might have misspoke. There is a support for Bricks, and we'll talk about Bricks in a second. But for Breakdance, Oxygen, Quickly, Generate Press, maybe that's what I meant. There is no support, and so if you're upgrading for those, you're in for a bad day. Yeah. Stay on V3. V3 is going to be guaranteed to receive security updates and critical bug fixes for the next 5 years. So there's going to be plenty of time for you to eventually adjust or at least receive updates.
Yeah.
On V4, V4 is going to work with Etch and it's going to work with Bricks. And generally speaking, the framework is going to work with anything that outputs stuff that it doesn't completely, like no deception, no like anything that could come out now or in the future, or products that we're not aware of, but that follow best practices when it comes to how they output HTML. You might be able to use ACSS on top of that. They may not have builder features like the context menus, the autobam, etc., etc. Those are for Etch and for bricks only at the moment. But the framework itself might be essentially all usable, or a very high percent of that might be usable with other products. But bricks and Etch are what we support in V4 specifically.
Yeah. Another good thing to point out here is we have new layer controls. So you can place all of these different modules in their own unique layers, named layers if you want to, which in a Era 4 world, everybody should be using @layer. All third-party developers. All third-party developers should be using layers, because what it gives you the ability to do is manipulate. Since we can't always control the order of the style sheets and how they load, we can then just control the layers, right? From anywhere. So everything should be in layers to avoid specificity conflicts, to give you greater control over what loads before what. And so automatic CSS does that. It will optionally, and I think these are by default. So buttons and links, the card framework, and the icon framework will all load in their own layers. And that will prevent any semblance of conflicts with other stuff that might be going on. If you find that like icons are breaking because you loaded some ridiculous third-party plugin that used some generic icon class or something, and it is completely breaking your ACSS icons, you can say, okay, I'm going to take that out of its layer and I'm going to win now, right? Because of how we load everything, this will very likely then override that thing that's overriding you, but you now have control over whether that's happening or not, which is nice. Okay, what else did we want to talk about here? Default.
There's a quick follow-up question. How do we apply classes we create to a custom layer?
Apply classes you create to a custom layer. So you would
like
do
a
this.
VM class?
Yeah. So my custom layer, boom. And I don't know. I think there's something in the framework I got to look at why this is throwing an error. But let me actually see if border. No, hold on. Task selector. Just save something that actually works and see if it will work. See if the error will go away. If the error doesn't go away, it's coming from the back end somewhere. Okay, that's fine. Good. All right, so layer, @layer, my custom layer. Something like that. And then you go my custom class, and then, border 5 pixel solid red or whatever. So if you want to do things in your own layer, this is a good way to do it. It's up to you. And I think we should maybe make a note of this, Matteo, that anything that goes in this custom Sass area, we might just want to output in its own layer, just by default.
Oh, that's a good, yeah. Let me make a note of that.
That way they don't have to worry about that.
Okay, noted.
Probably a stupid question, but is critical CSS still a thing? It can be if you're like really nitpicking your website performance scores and such. I would not, because here's the other thing. Like when you load critical CSS, so you have to decide what CSS is critical, and then you're essentially defining that. And then let's say you do that for a hero section because that's above the fold. If you change your hero section, somebody's got to remember to go update that critical CSS, right? Or it's going to get out of sync. Yeah. So there's like a constant, you got to babysit it, and the minuscule advantage you get from doing it, perhaps, I don't think it's worth that babysitting. So do I do it? No, I don't do it.
Yeah, agreed. It can help especially with scores and a little bit with the actual performance, because again, two different things. But it requires a lot of babysitting, and it's probably something that you don't want to do manually. And then you're going to need a tool that can do it automatically, but then does the tool do it right automatically? And if it doesn't, will you notice? It introduces scenarios that can break the website more easily than it can help. But if you can get it to work reliably, it's still a decent thing to have, I guess.
Yeah. I'm showing here on the screen too the essentially seamless UI integration with Etch,
yeah.
right? So it looks very, very, very native, especially when you dock it. And we've got some changes, like I said, coming to the palette area, but it's going to be a very, very seamless experience now. Another one I wanted to point out: surfaces and overlays have been dramatically improved. And this is an example of another area where this would break. If you use surfaces and overlays, perhaps, depending on how you set them up and configured them, they could potentially break if you try to upgrade them, right? And making this backwards compatible, like there would have been so much baggage involved in making everything backward. That's why it was like, no, there's too much stuff changing, and we don't want all that baggage going into Era 4 with us. We want this to be light, fast, like screaming fast, hyper efficient. That's why we did things the way that we did. But you now have custom surfaces and custom overlays separated from each other, right? And check this out too, that when I name them, give them custom names, we actually just polished this up the other day. So let's say I want to name this stripes. Okay, so I'm going to create and actually I wouldn't do an overlay. I might do a surface called stripes. Okay, so the name I'm going to change to stripes. You're going to see that now reflect, instead of like you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the box, but you can now custom name all of these surfaces. This, like, let's say that was like bubbles, and this one was like cement, and this one was like whatever, right? So you're able to come in here and immediately identify, oh, like, okay, these are the names of them. Those are the variable names now. Those are the utility class names, et cetera, et cetera. Really, really, really helpful stuff. The same thing happens in typography. So under fonts, when you're doing your fonts, I believe, in this area. So, yep. So if I do Arial, I'm going to see that change reflected now in my actual dropdown. I don't have to save and regenerate style sheets and reload the whole dashboard to see the new name. That's all going to happen in real time now. There's one other area. I think box shadows, same thing happened. So if I have my box shadow, it's like maybe I want a primary box shadow, and maybe I want a inset box shadow, or even a primary inset, like whatever I want to call them. So you can completely customize these, and you see those names reflected now in the tabs instantly, which is very helpful. I'll reload that because I don't want to break anything, but that's nice as well. You can do that on overlays. And now with our basic overlays, okay, I'm going to enable basic overlays. Here's an example of, again, I literally audited every single module, and I questioned, hey, I know that's how we did it in 2021, but there's got to be a better way now, right? Right? That's kind of what I did to every single module, okay? So let's go to look at basic overlays on the front end. I'm going to reset here, okay? Overlay. All right. So you might remember, if you studied the style sheet, the output in the old days, if you turn on overlays, it would be overlay primary, ultralight, overlay primary light, overlay blah, 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 for every fucking color imaginable. And because it's an overlay and it's got to support transparency, it's for every trans value as well. It was like just hundreds of lines of CSS just so you could have overlays, right? Well, now this is, I just turned on overlays. That's all that got added right here. This is all that got added, okay? Now let me show you how it works. So there's a default overlay. Let me put in, let's go section, hero section, take away the BG ultra dark, okay? Let's throw an image in here. I think isBG might be broken right now because of the refactor I did earlier. So I'm gonna throw in a, let's throw in, I'll do isBG manually. How about that? I'll just say background image. I'll just whip this up real quick. Let's throw this in here, this. This is why utilities are super helpful, because nobody wants to spend their life doing this. Okay. Boom. That probably be good enough. Okay. So we want an overlay on this. I'm going to go to the section and I'm just going to say overlay. Well, this is obviously broken here as well. And let me go position relative on this. Okay. And we'll debug this in a minute. But essentially what we're doing, let me try this on the image just to double check this. Actually, you would need, let's wrap this in a figure too. Images can't support pseudo elements. Overlays are done with pseudo elements. You do have to be careful trying to use them on images if they don't have figure tags. A figure tag, one reason, by the way, I tell everybody to wrap their images in figure tags. If it's a real image, and if it's an indexable image, even if you're using it in the background, wrap it in a figure tag, and it gives you the ability to have pseudo elements, right? So I'm gonna say overlay, okay. And then let's just try it, overlay. I think it's overlay color. Okay, I'll have to see what I did earlier today. I was literally doing changes right before this live stream. But this is how you would use it. So you're gonna get a default overlay color, which is like 80% black or something, like whatever the standard, like, hey, I need to make this thing darker. And then if you wanna customize it, you can literally just come in and you would do it on a random class or at the ID, or you can make your own utility classes for this. Like if you wanted an overlay primary, you could do this, overlay primary, and then just go overlay color is primary, and then you could do a color mix here, you could do whatever percentage you wanted, you could do however you wanted to set this up. And this aligns with the reality, because if we think about projects, okay, I wish you could see it right now, but you can't. This aligns with the reality that you don't, it's like the transition thing. It's like border radius. You don't use 70 different overlays throughout a project. Usually there's this overlay style, and the designer prefers to keep that pretty consistent. And you might end up with 2 of them or 3 of them or whatever, but certainly not, you don't need a whole library of them, right? And so what you can do now is you can just come in and do overlay, and that's gonna get you your generic overlay. And you can define that however you want to on that specific project. And then if you need a second one, you just do the overlay ... class. So doing this, let me zoom in for people here. Doing that right there will get picked up by the framework automatically. The pseudo element will be created, positioned, all the appropriate things set. And then you just name it whatever you want. Like we were talking about a minute ago, bubblegum, okay? Whatever hell thing you wanna call it, right? And then you come in and just say overlay color and define the value, and it takes care of itself. The overlay just works out of the box. And now what you end up with is 2 or 3 overlays that you actually need for this project instead of a library of 70 overlays that you're not actually gonna use. So way more efficient. You still get out of the box functionality. And then there's one thing to show there as well, which is you now can control whether it generates a before or an after pseudo element, because there will be times where you're doing something else and that hijacks the before element. And if you try to use the before for your overlay, it's not gonna work. You can switch it to after, and this should generate, let me go back to our style sheet here. Okay, so you can see right here, afters, right? And then if I elect to have that generate befores, I have too many tabs open. Let's go to additional styling, and actually, so surfaces and overlays, basic overlays, enable, and before, oh yeah, I'm in a completely different tab. So this could do anything. All right, let's go back to, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of, oh, we'll show docs in a minute. Don't let me forget that, Mateo. We did a lot of hard work on docs. We're gonna have to show it.
Docs, all right.
Let's refresh here, see where we're at. Okay, so surfaces and overlays, custom overlays, basic overlays, after, before, save. Go check, and now I'm back to befores. So didn't have that choice before, now you have that choice. There were some people had conflicts because it's like, hey, I put a before pseudo element, now my overlays aren't working. Okay, you can switch it. Let's look at docs before we forget. Docs.automaticxcss.com. I urge you to go there, okay? We love Docusaurus. We found this out by creating our documentation in Etch in Docusaurus. And we loved it so much that we converted all of the ACSS docs over to Docusaurus. Loads lightning fast, way easier to navigate, way better search, and check this out. Let's go up here to the top. I can now choose, am I reading 3.x docs or am I reading 4.x docs? Now, take this as a grain of salt, okay? This all has not been updated for 4.0 yet. All the 3.x docs are accurate. So if you're needing 3.x help, go to the 3.x docs, those are all accurate. 4.x, I still got to do a lot of changes to the documentation based on refactorings, but that will be done. And then you have one central source of truth. You'll be able to seamlessly switch back and forth and see the differences. Like you can literally be on a card, right? Card framework and go, how did this work on 3.x? How does it work on 4.x? Okay. And you could just see seamlessly the differences between the two, which is going to be fantastic. This is a huge, huge, huge upgrade for like learning how to use the framework and getting a lot of questions that you might have instantly answered without having to create posts, without having to put in support tickets or anything else, right? Okay. Let's go back to some questions.
Yeah. Okay, so you touched on border radius controls, but there was a question, does V4 have border radius controls?
Yes, yeah, of course. It's the same. That did not get refactored a ton. So what you do is you define a global border radius value, a global width for your border style, your actual global border style, a dark border color and a light border color, and then which one do you want to use by default, right? And then you could go use it essentially the same way you use transitions. Okay, let me delete this right here. So if I wanted a border on this, I would just say border var border, and now I have a border, right? You also have the partials. So you have border style, you have border width, you have border color dark and border color light. So if you need to use any of those for different situations, you can. I think and by the way, it's if you go to here, right? Let me look. Are we inlining these? Yeah, we're inlining those. Let's go back.
Apparently, it was a troll question. I don't know if you want to keep answering.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Well, people do ask about that.
I mean, it's still useful to demonstrate how it works.
Oh, they're talking about radius because Gutenberg just got radius controls after 9 years of development. Let's see. Workflow enhancements. Go to borders and dividers. Borders. Somebody's trying to call me. Border scheme, dark. There is one change that there was a big box here, I believe. It's hard to remember now because I've looked at this interface for so long, for like the last 5 months. There was a big box where it was kind of like transition, where you define the whole string out, and then that's what you use. It doesn't work like that anymore. It's just way simpler. You just set up the things, and you just go use it. That's all you do. So that would be the one big change.
Right. Then there was a question about the refactoring for VS Forms. Is that happening in V4? I think it's a good moment to also talk about upcoming changes to forms in general.
Yeah. This is a lot. Some people are gonna get sad face here, and it's okay. It's reality. It is what it is. Okay. We wanted to support a bunch of different form systems, Fluent, Gravity, on and on and on and on. We actually made probably the most valiant attempt that anybody has ever made. And here is the problem. We also wanted to support naked HTML forms. So if you grab a naked HTML form and pop a form class on, bang, it would come to life like magic. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Yeah, that would be fantastic. Here are the fundamental problems. With naked forms, let's just start there, because that was like the one thing I wanted to do out of the box. There is no standard for form markup. I'm talking about the HTML side of forms, okay? For different intricacies there is, but not the general thing that actually matters to styling, because styling a lot of times depends on structure, okay? For example, go have a conversation with Grok or ChatGPT or any of them and say, how would I create a label with an input? And it will give it to you two different ways. There are two different valid ways to create labels with inputs, or inputs with labels, however you want to decide. And in order to style things properly, and then there's the concept of legends, and then there's the concepts of how different form input / label combinations are grouped together. And there's no real standard. So what we find is that this form system does it one way and this form system does it one way. And if you have ChatGPT generate form code for you that's naked HTML, it's going to do it differently from how Grok does it. And that's going to do it differently from how Claude does it. And now what? What do we do? What do we do? What are we doing? We can't style it if we don't know the structure. The styling is very dependent on structure a lot of times. And then you look at WS Form versus Fluent Forms. Fluent Forms has 80 little bells and whistles that WS Form does not have, and vice versa. And then you have another form system over here that has these different bells and whistles. And so we're not trying to, we're trying to create multiple different frameworks. Like every form system that you support requires its own little mini framework. And then we have to essentially toss all that work away, that's already more work than anybody's ever done, because none of these form systems really, I think WS Form was the first one to start to standardize a token framework for styling forms. But it's still proprietary. It's still not even like a publicly accessible, what I would like to do actually to go forwards is, here is the standard for form markup, and here is the standard for form tokenization. Everybody start using it. It's open source. Have at it. But quit this bullshit of you use this markup, you use that markup. Some things are tokenized, some things aren't tokenized. It's wild, wild west. It's absolute chaos. And there's no way for the framework to work magically with all these different scenarios. We tried our absolute best for months and months and months. And I essentially had to just pull the plug and be like, this doesn't make any sense anymore. This is not, it can't scale. Every new form system, you would have to toss out everything you did on all the others and just start fresh. And then you get into testing. Do you know how many look at how many inputs there are. Look, just testing alone, you would spend hours and hours. Does this one work? Does that one work? Does that live preview? Does this not live preview? Oh, when I turn this off, this had to disappear and then reappear, and then it's impossible. I decided it's impossible. And so what do we have to do? We have to pick a flagship form product, we have to integrate with it, and we have to move on with our life. And if you want to be able to style forms with ACSS, that's the one you use. We chose the best one that exists for WordPress. I think it's pretty objective at this point. Okay, been proven multiple times. And I can't tell you how many emails I get from people. Okay, if you don't want to listen, you don't have to listen. You can just turn this off. Turn this off, use whatever system you want to use, whatever. But I get email after email after email, literally from people. Kevin, I don't know why I waited so long on WS Form, but I tried this one, I tried that one. I've been using this one for years. I kept running into it, and I switched to W. I should have done this years ago. I should have listened to you years ago. I get those emails all the time. So you might be one of those people that's like, nah, this one's the best. This one does it all for me. You're probably gonna send me an email after a while, okay? Because it's just, and if I did a video on it, it'd be 4 hours long. But there are so many examples of no, you just can't beat this. It's not beatable. It's just unbeatable. I'm sorry, it's unbeatable by anything else out in the market. So you can use what you want, but we had to pick one. And I didn't go for popularity. I didn't go, well, there's Gravity has more people. That'd be so marketable. Kevin, wouldn't that help your marketing to go tell Gravity Forms user base that they got chosen because they're no, I don't care. It wasn't about that. It was literally about, technically speaking, what's the best one for users? Technically speaking, WS Form wins on technicality, okay? That's it. Doesn't have the biggest user base, not the most popular, but I've never cared about that. We go with what is the best outcome for users. That's what we're gonna go with, okay? And so that's what we did. So plenty of people are gonna cry about it. That's the explanation. Do with it what you will, but it is physically impossible to support all of them. We tried. We blew gazillions of dollars, probably not that many, but lots of dollars. Lots of dollars were lit on fire trying to make this work. And it doesn't work because there's no standard, there's no consistency. It is what it is, okay? So if you wanna shoot me in the back for trying and then failing, you can do that, that's fine, okay? I'll take that L, but this is a win for WS Form users. By the way, I've said, hey, if you kind of follow if you do the BIM thing, if you do the token first thing, you're not gonna have any problem. Hey, how long have I been saying WS Form? Okay, So it came down to this. It is what it is.
All right. I would say chat is taking in reasonably well so far. I haven't seen many complaints, but maybe chat is just behind. I don't know. All right. So let's take another couple of questions. Will you include the little improvements that have been requested, such as the scroll bar customization in V4?
Like customizing the browser scroll bar.
Yeah, I think that's
probably. Yeah, not like immediately. But if that hasn't been officially feature requested, then and I haven't looked at the feature requests in a while. I need to go back and revisit it once we get this stable thing out the door. But I could see that because they're, especially with, here's the thing. This actually, do I have this? You guys got to see this, okay? What's coming to CSS for carousels and sliders is phenomenal. It's not here yet, okay? Just only get a little excited about it because it's not, you can't do it yet, but I'll show you what I built. Let's go to, yeah. All right, guys, this is pure CSS. There is not a single line of JavaScript here. Not anywhere. This is pure CSS. Let's see if it's responsive. Let's get this out of the way. Can even touch drag it. Pure CSS. Not a single line of JavaScript. Super lightweight, super customizable, very fun to build, really awesome. But what brought this to mind was the question about scroll bars, because there would be a horizontal scroll bar here that you have to get rid of, or potentially style however you want to style it. Some custom style would be nice. You definitely would not want the default browser scroll bar to show up here, especially on PCs, because let's be honest, PCs, they got some ugly scroll bars, okay? So I think some utilities like scroll bar none or scroll bar primary or whatever, and then nice little panel inside of ACSS to make that nice and pretty dope, like a primary styled scroll bar for your project. I think that'd be pretty dope, pretty easy to implement, and it would make your, because nobody is out here memorizing the scroll bar pseudo classes for writing custom CS. I don't even memorize them. I don't care. So I would love to have a little utility here or there to do custom scroll bars. So I would say that's a yes.
Yeah, I would say in general, like there's still a bunch of refactoring that we want to do on the backend side of things. So it will still be a little bit before this can go out stable. And so that might give us a little time to squeeze in the extra CSS framework side things. So yeah. Oh, by the way, nice that you mentioned the CSS only carousel, because we had a question whether there were any plans to build one for frames.
Build what for frames?
The CSS only carousel.
Oh yeah. Like once it's supported, actually, like I would say, so for example, let's go to Etch docs, right? So the carousel, did we list sliders separately? I think a carousel and a slider are essentially the same thing. If everybody doesn't know, like you can switch, actually I can probably show you. Let's do this. How easy it would actually be. I didn't even make this a component yet. Now it's a slider. So I got to put an aspect ratio control on that. But now it just goes, well, let's just do that real quick. Let's go, because that's dumb. Aspect ratio 16 by 9, something like that. 16 by 5. Yeah, that's a super tall image. Let's do 16 by 3, and let's object fit cover. Okay, it's gonna break these images because that's not a great image to use here, but this is a slider, okay? So if you can't tell the difference, a slider is like one slide at a time, and a carousel is a group that slides, right? So you don't need two different components for that. You just need a control point on a single component. But like even our Etch native components, I would much prefer to use just native CSS. If we can avoid JavaScript, it's just the cleaner, easier way to do it. This is built to be, by the way, the accessibility side of this, right, is pretty much handled. Look, I'm using the keyboard now. This is the benefit. If you just use a bunch of divs and JavaScript, you got to do every single little thing yourself. Account for changing the arias, changing the, making it keyboard navigational, like all that stuff. It's such a nightmare. The benefit of the CSS only version is the spec is designed to the browsers interpret the features as natively accessible. So it takes a lot of accessibility stuff off your plate, and it just works, and it just passes. And it's very, very lightweight. And so I would like all of them to be CSS only when it actually can be supported in that fashion. Accordions is another one. I think that you can get accordions to the point where you don't need JavaScript. You still need JavaScript for a couple things here and there, but I think they're going to get it to where you don't need JavaScript at all. So that's going to be nice.
All right. I still have three questions saved from chat earlier, and then maybe, I mean, it's almost been 2 hours. I think we might want to do a last call.
Yeah. Let's do a last call.
Yeah.
I'll go through and make sure I didn't miss anything too.
Question number 1, is there a way to search all the options in the ACSS panel?
You can search right here.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's go to see if it, we may need a recheck search now because I've done so many things.
Yeah.
Let me try content. Yeah, there's something up with search right now in general, but yes, you can, like if you go into ACSS right now and use the search box, you'll see how it works. You'll see essentially what it does. It keeps all the results grouped. So if something belongs to something else, it'll let you know. So you kind of have context for where that setting lives and what it does. But yeah, you can search for anything from right here.
All right, next. Is the Figma plugin export compatible with ACSS v4?
Is the what export?
The Figma plugin.
Oh.
Maybe you should ask Tommy?
Mostly.
I don't know if we tried.
I mean, it mostly is. The problem is, and this is the problem we're going to constantly run into. It's like Figma is not a development environment. And Figma actually does quite a bad job of translating a lot of things to dev. For example, you can color mix in dev. There's a color mix function. There's no color mix in Figma. It's just not a thing. It's not a feature. So for example, if I was using like, there's just some things that you're probably going to have to tweak after you do it. It's going to export probably 95% of the stuff you need, right? But I go into color assignments and I go to text and I'm using color mix for dark muted and light muted. This function doesn't exist in Figma. There's no way for it to automatically generate that, right? There's just a lot of little quirks like that. But again, like I said, 95% of it is going to, yes, carry over.
All right. Any plans to enable the ACSS panel to pop out to a second monitor?
We'll be looking at that as we also look with Etch being able to do that as well. I think we're going to engineer that kind of thing probably for both at the same time. So yeah, it is on the radar.
All right. When will V4 be available? We don't have a date yet set. It probably is going to be sooner. It's going to be in like not a lot of time. We're nearing the point where this can be released, but it's still too soon to say when. Yeah, that makes sense.
The other thing I wanted to highlight is people are going to wonder, hey, you got rid of a lot of utility class modules. So what is going to replace those? Like flex row. No, there's no utility class for flex row anymore, right? Like, so that's where recipes are going to come in. And so you're going to have these recipes where it's like, okay, I want to flex row this. Okay, you flex row it. Now it's Flex Road, right? But the difference is you're doing it in a scalable, maintainable way because you're assigning this to a class that actually makes sense. You're not just littering a project with a bunch of utility classes. If I have a link inside this hero section and I wanted to clickable parent it, I don't think this one's set up yet. It's still based on our recipe for bricks. But essentially, this is what would happen. You don't need a clickable parent utility class because you can simply go to the link that needs to be clickable parent and expand the clickable parent recipe, and boom, it's attached to that component. It's attached to that class, that block, whatever it happens to be. And so this is going to be a variable first, recipe first framework. There will be some utilities for things here and there that really still make sense to do with a utility class here and there. But it is a variable first, recipe first framework. And recipes are going to be an amazing aspect of the workflow, especially when they're directly integrated into the Etch UI. I don't know if you weren't on an Etch live stream that I did a while back where I teased what we're developing as a mini GUI inside of this CSS panel that writes CSS for you, so you don't have to write it all. So you click some icons, bang, 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 it's just writing the CSS for you, just like styling panels would, but without any of the downsides of styling panels. So you combine that, the mini GUI, with GUI in code, which is another layer of a graphical user interface that we're gonna be developing for inside of these code lines, different interactive elements, like for example, on a color, an interactive swatch appears, okay? So there's GUI encode, there's the mini GUI, then there's recipes, then there's AutoVar, AutoCalc, right? These different layers, you are going to be flying through building websites. It's gonna be phenomenal. No, and without styling panels and without the downsides of styling panels, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be fantastic.
Right. So I want to address the comment when it says, it's a nice and ambiguous time frame answer, and not a lot of time is quite subjective. Yes, I'm aware I'm very good at walking that line of nice and ambiguous. But I will say this, which is a lot less ambiguous. We have been using the dev releases in production sites. And essentially, I think from the next release where we're going to do some deprecations and make deprecations clear, from the next one onwards, I don't expect a lot of breaking changes. The frames, the form stuff maybe, but that's it. So to an extent, I would say if you're starting a website now, even though these are called dev, you might be okay for the most part. We don't want to say it officially yet because we still are in the process of updating certain things, but for the most part, we don't plan on breaking more stuff. So you should be good. But we know what going into like 4.0 stable or 4.0 RC signals. So the sooner we get there, the sooner we're would be happy to go into that as well.
Yeah. There is, it's going to take me too long to find it in the Figma, so I'm not even going to try. But there's going to be that mini GUI sitting up here on the top row where if you needed, so there's going to be like two ways to do things, right? See, I just easily added flex direction column. There's going to be an icon up here for doing that. So you just hit like a little down arrow and it's going to give you flex direction column. If I hit a little inline arrow, flex direction row. If I hit a little grid arrow, it'll do grid. But you can also do recipes if you prefer to do recipes. But this gives you an example. Like if I was just like position relative, gap of content gap, and then you have the auto var, so you're not writing your vars all the time. And then it's like, okay, I want this to be flex column. So you do flex column, there's your flex column. Now you're like, but I'm gonna add a has me selector and I'm gonna add a container query because less than or equal to rim of this, whatever I happen to be on at the time, I actually want this to be flex row. And see how like quickly I am doing these kind of and fairly advanced things, a has me selector with a container query, and these I forgot what these are called now, the new logical operators or whatever. I just whipped up like a change in the layout direction without much typing, That's how the recipes and the mini GUI and all this stuff is going to come together to make things very, very, very fast. Because nobody likes to write those two properties over and over again. And I could do something like a grid 3. I haven't even looked at these in a while. But there you go. Okay, so now I got display grid template columns, var grid 3, grid template rows 1FR, move on with my life. Like very, very, very fast, very efficient stuff. Variable first, recipe first, auto BIM. Because let's remember the time saved that auto BIM gave me when I put this whole thing together and I right click and go, hey, create my classes. There's all my classes. Then I come down here, I click a bunch of buttons. It's writing CSS for me that I prefer. I drop a couple recipes in and I move on my life. And I am like I guarantee there won't be a getting to the finish line faster than this workflow right here. Unless you're cutting a bunch of corners and you're just producing a bunch of garbage. But even at that, if you watch the people who generally produce garbage because they don't know what they're doing, they will fumble around in those interfaces for hours. It's not faster. It's just not. I watch them. I watch them do it. I literally sat down and I was like, I am just going to, I might want to shoot myself in the head, but I'm going to watch these people build in Elementor or Divi or Beaver or whatever. And every video I pull up, I'm just like, this is taking forever. And when they get to the finish line, it's gonna suck. What is the benefit here? It's all just excuse making. That's all it is. It's just excuse making from people that don't actually have a workflow and don't actually know what they're doing. They want to believe that what they're doing is easier and faster, and it's just not, and it's provably not. And so we're gonna have to make some more videos, but that's gonna be the end for today. Chris, you just joined, buddy, you're 2 hours. How long are we into this? 2 hours and 5 minutes late? Okay.
Quick recap because they asked about V4 and Bricks. Bricks will be supported in V4. Essentially, I would say everything from Bricks is going to be supported, with the exception maybe that we're not going to style Bricks forms because we said that we're dropping some of the forms. And from the builder features perspective, we just redid context menus and all them for Bricks V2, which comes for ACSS V3 as well. It's already been released. We're maybe dropping a couple of mostly unused features, builder features, but I'm not quite sure yet. But yeah, generally, whatever is supported in Etch is probably also going to be supported in Bricks by ACSS V4.
To answer David's question, no, it will not become exclusive to Etch. And I'll combine this with an answer that somebody asked earlier, is will ACSS be available outside of WordPress as a standalone framework of some sort? That is the goal. Yes, we want that to be the case. We want people to be able to use automatic CSS in software projects. We want them to be able to use ACSS in custom websites outside of WordPress. In WordPress, regardless of the, if they're doing some sort of like, if you're that kind of person that loves custom block development in VS Code, I don't know why, because we're about to kill that workflow, but you would potentially be able to use it there as well. So yes, we want that to be the case for sure.
Yeah, that was the question that I had saved for last.
Okay, yeah.
And just very quickly, like, why would we want ACSS to be Etch exclusive? Why would we want to, like, there are profitable, even if you just look at it from a business perspective, there are profitable markets out there. Why would we want to limit ourselves to Etch only? This is a critique that I heard very often. Oh, they're gonna, now that they're focusing on Etch, they're gonna make ACSS Etch exclusive, and they're just gonna, remove Bricks, and they're not gonna support Bricks. Why would we do that?
Yeah. And like, it's, we did drop support for some builders, but if you take a look at the reasons why, it should be fairly clear. And by the way, there's, there are people, like, to talk about Generate for a second. Like, I like Generate. I thought that Generate, in terms of block systems, because there's a lot of different block systems out there, I had a lot of respect for Generate because they kept it really clean. They kept it really in line with core principles. They supported variables when I asked. I was one of the early people. Like people don't like see a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. I was like knocking on their door going, hey, we can't integrate with you until you support variable values in your inputs. They didn't support variables in their inputs, right? And we were kind of like pressing and pressing and pressing for that. And then they did it. And then they built this whole class system, which I was like, oh, that's cool. And not just a class system, but an actual selector system. And so I had a lot of respect for all of that. And I actually like it as a concept. And I generally like the output. Generate is ruined by Gutenberg. The Gutenberg UX ruins anything that has to happen inside of there beyond content editing, because that's all it is for. We have to be clear about that. This idea that we're going to turn this Microsoft Word editor, like glorified Word editor, into a page builder, you're just smashing your head against a brick wall repeatedly. I don't prefer to do that to myself. Some people like to do that. I don't, okay? I don't like to have a bloody face every day and a headache. I don't know why some people do, but they do. But like, you got to stop trying to turn that thing into a page builder. It is just not a page builder. It's not appropriate. It's not an appropriate interface for page building, period, point blank, okay? And so that's what ruins Generate. And there are people who make it work. I watch their videos. I sat myself down and I said, I'm not going to enjoy this, but I'm going to watch. And I watch them work and Generate. Do they get the job done? Yes. Is it a ridiculous, absurd, slow, just terrible workflow? Also, yes. It's just, I can't, it would be too slow. What are we doing? What are we doing? There's so many problems with that workflow. And so I just like, I can't endorse this. And I'm not going to beat my head against the wall trying to integrate with this, because Gutenberg causes so many problems. We already got enough problems on our plate. You know, the extent of what you should do. This is why the workflow is the way that it is. And people will think, see, there's two ways you can analyze this. You could say, well, Kevin just says this because he built Etch to do that. No, sir, ma'am, put that in reverse. I built Etch to do what Etch does because the other way sucks. It's not like, oh, we built Etch this way, now we got to sell that workflow. No. We made that workflow because it's the workflow that actually makes sense. We were selling it before we made the tool. We were saying these things before Etch existed, okay? So you should build in a proper, appropriate environment called Etch. And then when you go to Gutenberg, okay, everything you built shows up there, and it can be interacted with. Sure, right? It can be interacted with. It can be edited by the user, not you. Not because we don't want to live here. This is not for us. This is for Bev. This is for Joe in accounting, you know? This is for the end user. It's not for us, right? This is the editor where editing happens. This is not the page builder where page building happens, or the development environment where development happens. We gotta get this straightened out, okay? This is an editor. This is a development environment. Two radically different things. And this Gutenberg place can never. They've been beating their head against the wall for 8 years trying to make this thing a page builder, and they're not even close. And as good as Generate did of a job of trying to make it happen, it's still ungodly slow and limited. Go watch how people have to write custom CSS. Just go watch any of the number of things that you will fly through in Etch. Like, we're talking done like that, and they are still plodding along. Well, you got to do it this way. Well, it's the workaround. Well, it's the magic area. Well, it's the this. Oh my gosh, what are we doing? And we have to be honest about this. Those people are consenting to be abused, okay? They are consenting to that abuse. You don't have to consent to that abuse, okay? You might watch their videos, but you need to realize what you're watching. They are consenting to that situation. You do not have to consent to that situation. There are better options available, okay? And some of them do it because they don't like me. Let's just say that. They won't use Etch because they're like, I don't like that guy. So they are opting in for hours and weeks and months and years of pain to spite me. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. But that's up to them. That's their choice. That's their choice to make. But like, I encourage you to go watch the videos. This is where I'm not going to be like, oh, don't go watch them. You might learn something. You might find a faster workflow. You're not. Go watch every video you can find. You're not going to find a faster workflow. You're not going to find a better workflow. I encourage you. If you want to waste all that time, go watch. I've done it. Okay. You're not going to find one. You're not going to find one. All right. Okay. I think we can get out of here now.
Yeah. I think we did our job.
See, you got to give it.
Yeah,
see,
he
Carl,
gets it. He gets it.
They get it. They get it. Okay. All right. I'm just reading a couple little chats here. I'm glad to hear that, Chris. I'm glad to hear that. We appreciate it. All right. I will give you a better timeline than Mateo. I would say if this isn't in your hands by January, something has gone wrong. Okay. I would like to see it come out before then. I would think the only thing that does delay things just a little bit is a bunch of holidays and travel and stuff like that. But I would say like January is like a really, like, how about we kickstart the year with Etch 1.0 stable, perhaps, I don't know, and ACSS 4.0. And just
that would be awesome. Let's try.
And just have a whole bunch of fun. That would be awesome, right? Okay, we'll leave it at that. Love you guys. See you again very, very, very soon. Peace.